Good evening, Preeti ma'am.
Can't hear anyone.
No? Can
Hello,
you please
ma'am.
read?
No, no, yeah, now I can hear it. You were
Okay.
Yeah.
on mute, I think, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. It's morning here, but evening there, I guess. So,
Yes, yes. Good evening, Preeti ma'am. Good evening. I think, ma'am, your audio is muted, Preeti ma'am. Good evening, Manjari ma'am. Good evening, Ajay. Good evening, Debashree ma'am. This
Good
is
evening.
Premjith ma'am.
good.
Good
Good
evening. Good
evening,
evening.
everyone. Good evening, ma'am.
Good
Good evening. Good evening. Preeti ma'am's voice is muted, I think. If somebody can nudge her, it would be nice.
No, we can't hear you, Preeti. I think there's something
Yeah.
wrong with the audio.
Mute.
You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Audio is mute.
Maybe the device is an issue.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Priyadashni. Good evening.
Good evening. I am Priyadashni, coordinator and compare for this evening session of In Tandem. Research is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. Albert said, in tandem, teams are always soulful. We at Queen Mary's College are progressive but not in the rat race. We have a legacy of intellectual refinement, and that is what we seek to pursue through In Tandem. The motto of In Tandem is Together We Grow. And today's theme is Prison Narratives. Age is just a number, prison is just a room. A large number of authors have been incarcerated due to different political, sociological, religious and other reasons. When they are physically incarcerated, does it imprison their mind and imagination? Definitely not. When physically caged, they let their mind and imagination fly high. In our journey since 14th July 2021, we have met like-minded faculty and researchers across the country, and one of them is our chairperson for this evening, Dr. Debashree Dattaray, ma'am. We welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am is Associate Professor in Comparative Literature and Deputy Coordinator, Center for Canadian Studies at Jadavpur University, Kolkata. She has been the recipient of a Fulbright Alumni Award in 2019 and Fulbright Doctoral Fellowship at State University of New York. Her areas of research and publications are post-colonial studies, environmental studies, indigenous studies, education, gender, narrative, comparative Indian literature methodology, and folklore. She is the author of Oral Tradition of Northeast, a case study of Karbi oral traditions, and has co-edited At the Crossroads of Literature and Culture. Following Fourth-Head Paths, discussion on the narrative, eco-criticism and environment, rethinking literature and culture, and Indian response to literature. Today we have an interesting prelude to the presentation, a pictorial quiz on famous presents brought to us by Mr. Ajay Ramakrishnan Venkitachalam, Sir, Research Scholar, Department of English from Presidency College. An interesting session awaits us. Let's delve into the theme present narratives. On this note, I hand over the proceedings to our chairperson, Dr. Debashree Dattaray ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Priyadarshini, for the kind introduction. And thank you to Tandem for having me over. I've had very pleasant memories. Thank you, Professor Srinivasan, also. So I understand that it begins with a little quiz that Ajay wants to do, right? So perhaps you could do that, and then I would introduce you for the paper. And how much minute per paper presenter? Priyadarshini, if you could tell me.
15 minutes
15
maximum.
minutes. Okay. All right, 15
Yeah.
minutes. So Ajay can do that. So should I introduce Ajay so that you can do the quiz and then we can go straight away to your presentation? Would that work, Ajay? Is that okay? All right. So Ramakrishnan Venkitachalam is a PhD scholar full-time working under the supervision of Dr. B. Sivaraman, Associate Professor, PGN Research Department of English, Presidency College, Autonomous, Chennai. His present research focuses on present writings. His areas of interest include life writing in literatures and cultural studies. So not only are we looking forward to Ajay's paper, he would be presenting the paper with the title soon, but I think he also has a quiz for us as well. So over to you, Ajay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So I'll be asking you 15 questions that will be in sequence with pictures, and you'll have to try and answer them. Okay, I'll just start presenting. Excuse, is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, absolutely. But I think, yeah, no, yes.
Ma'am, is it visible? Hello?
No, your screen is visible. You need to do it on the PowerPoint. Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. Okay, I shall proceed to the first question. In the picture, you can see a fort. This fort was a colonial prison in Maharashtra that housed freedom fighters like Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel. What is the name of the fort? It's actually a pretty famous prison in Maharashtra, and it's got a lot of history behind it.
Yeah, anyone can answer, even faculty, because we can just move on. Time management is important.
Yes.
I think if we can't guess, it's easier if you tell us.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
I can guess. Can I say it?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Ahmednagar Fort.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it is Ahmednagar Fort, which was taken by the British in 1803. This fort was originally part of the Ahmednagar Sultanate, and it is said that Aurangzeb, the Mughal emperor, died here at the age of 88. Right, good. I shall proceed to the next question now. The image depicts the ruins of one of the earliest jails to be built in the Andaman Islands. What is the name of this jail? Anybody can answer.
I think it's difficult for some of us to guess right now, so it might be actually easier if you told us.
Okay.
And we learn in the process as well.
Okay,
so
ma'am.
I'm very glad that you have this experience.
Okay, right. This is technically the Viper Island jail. Everyone, when they usually talk about the Andaman Islands, everybody talks about the cellular jail. But this was actually one of the first penal installations to be constructed over there in the Andaman Islands, specifically in the Viper Island, and all the prisoners and other things that were placed here were shifted over to the cellular jail only in 1908 after construction was completed there at the Andaman at the cellular jail in Andaman. We will move on to the next question. The picture depicts a jail where Indian freedom fighter Vavu Chidambaram Pillai was imprisoned. Where is this jail located? I will give you a clue. It is in Tamil Nadu. I'm not talking about his incarceration at Kannur. This is a prison in Tamil Nadu. It is still active. Anybody can answer.
Central Prison in Coimbatore.
Yes, that answer is correct. This is the central prison in Coimbatore, also called the Coimbatore jail. We'll move on to the next question. There are two images that you see before you. The images depict the most notorious prison in the history of World War II. Where is this prison located?
This is Auschwitz.
Excuse me?
Auschwitz.
Yeah, it is Auschwitz. The question is, where is this prison located?
Right.
Warsaw, Poland.
Yes, correct. This is Auschwitz, which is the most notorious prison during World War II. And if one notices the wordings Arbeit macht frei written above the entrance, it actually translates to work sets you free. Now we'll move on to the next question. The image depicts the entrance of a detention and labor camp run by the Soviet Union. What were these institutions called?
Gulam?
Yes, correct. These institutions were called a gulag, and this specific image actually shows you the entrance of the gulag at Vorkuta. And a small bit of data that I would like to give to the listeners is that similar to the previous image where we saw work sets you free, even here the writing you see at the entrance is actually translated as work in the USSR is a matter of honor, glory, courage and heroism. Okay, we will move on to the next question. You have two images in front of you. One is a painting, the other is a memorial. This connects to a colonial Indian prison, which was where an event happened, and this specific event was considered a great tragedy by the British Raj. Where is this prison located? Or where was it located?
Just a guess. Jallianwala Bagh?
No, ma'am.
No.
Okay, I will give you the answer. This is called the Black Hole Jail or the Black Hole Prison in Calcutta. If you look at the image to the left, it shows British officers trying to get a breath of fresh air. What happened was that the claim from the British side is 143 officers and people were sort of imprisoned in a very small space inside that small cell, and nearly all of them suffocated to death or died of heat exhaustion overnight. This took place because the fort over there at Bengal was ransacked by Sirajuddin Dowlah's forces, and all of these British officers were taken captive. This is the Black Hole Prison in Calcutta. Okay, next question. You can see an image in front of you. What is the name of this famous prison located in England that housed people like Sir Walter Raleigh and Anne Boleyn?
I think people know, but they're just waiting, giving an opportunity to each other. So I think you just come out. Yes, Venita.
Yeah.
Venita texted the answer.
Okay, I can't see it since I'm sharing the screen.
Oh,
The Tower of London.
yeah, she said she.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
This is the Tower of London. This is the Tower of London, and something humorous in this particular installation is that it not only housed deviants like people who were considered deviant like Sir Walter Raleigh and Anne Boleyn, but at various points it was also a secured place that housed the crown jewels of England also. We'll move on to the next question. Now you see an image in front of you. This is Robben Island prison in South Africa. Name the famous apartheid leader who was imprisoned here.
Nelson Mandela.
Yes, correct. The person is Nelson Mandela, and this prison was recently declared, or a while back was declared, as a UNESCO heritage site. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This prison in England inspired one of its famous inmates to write the poem Ballad of Reading Gaol. What is the name of this inmate? He is a very famous man of literature. This is a prison in England inspired by one of its famous inmates to write the poem Ballad of Reading Gaol.
Oscar Wilde.
Yes, it is Oscar Wilde. Thank you. We'll move to the next question now. What you see in front of you is a painting that depicts a certain event in history. The picture depicts the destruction of a prison that marks the start of one of the greatest revolutions in global history. Where did this revolution take place?
France.
Sir, if you can be a little loud.
The Bastille in France.
Yes, this is the burning of the Bastille in France that marks the start of the French Revolution. Thank you. I'll move on to the next question now. What you see in front of you in the image is an Indian memorial that pays respect to a battle involving prison officials, prisoners, and tribals, a significant piece of history that has not been discussed too openly in India. Where is this memorial located?
Yeah, give us the answer.
Is this in Andaman?
Yes, it is in Andaman. Correct. That's the correct answer. This memorial commemorates the Battle of Aberdeen that took place in 14th May 1859 and was fought between officials of the British Empire, in some portion the prisoners and prison officials, who fought against the indigenous Andamanese tribals.
Is this related to the movie Kala Pani?
Uh,
There was a movie Kala Pani which was about the horrific
yeah, yes,
prisons
the
in
prisoners were actually bought from Ross Island.
Yes. Thank you.
Right, I'll move on to the next question. In the image you see in front of you is a very famous prison. This famous prison is used as a setting in the book The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Where is this prison located?
Is it Chateau Dev?
Yes, that is correct. It is. Yes, it is the. It's a little hard for me to pronounce the name. The Chateau d'Elf that's located in Marseille, France. Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. The image in front of you depicts a famous military prison is run by a country to hold and torture inmates without any trial. What is the name of the country and where is this prison located?
If you could tell us, please, Ajay.
Okay, ma'am. This is the military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and it is run by the United States of America. It's placed there in Cuba so that no legal rules pertaining to human rights has any effect over there, since it's not technically US soil. If one looks at the board there in the image, it actually says honor bound to defend freedom. We do not know whose freedom they are defending. Okay, the next image, I'll move on to the next question. This is the entrance of a prison. This prison is in Pune, was referred to as a mandir by Mahatma Gandhi. What is the name of this prison? He's even written a book about it. The name is given in the title itself.
Yerwadi.
Yes, correct. This is Yerwada Central Jail, or called Yerwada Mandir. The name of the Gandhi referred to this prison particularly as a mandir, which means a temple. I'll move on to the next question now. This is the last image. The image depicts the inside of one of the oldest prisons in India that was demolished to build buildings for a medical college. What is the name of the jail and where is it located?
Madras Central Prison?
Yes, exactly, correct. This is the central prison here at Madras, which was demolished, and if one goes inside there now, you have hostels and buildings that cater to the Madras Medical College being run inside. Thank you. This is the last question, and I'd like to end my session here.
Thank you so much, Ajay. So, would you now continue with your paper? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
yes.
Right.
Thank you very much for that interesting quiz and for helping us learn so much. So, over to you for the quiz. For the paper, you have around 15 minutes.
Okay.
So, when it's like 2 minutes to there, I would let you know.
Okay,
Right?
ma'am. Thank you. Right. I will begin now. So I titled this particular paper as Dam Goals and Tribal Gaols. And this paper is basically an analysis of two short prison narratives that were composed, that belong to this particular book, titled Vidar Justice, Stories of Women in Prison, written by Nandini Oza. This particular book was published in 2006. And let me just give you a backdrop or a socio-historical context of what this is all about. The author was imprisoned for protesting against the building of the Sardar Sarovar Dam project, and she was part of the Narmada Bachao Andolan, which was the NGO that resisted the government idea or the decision to build the Sardar Sarovar Dam across the Narmada River, thereby creating a huge calamity that displaced hundreds and hundreds of villages and thousands of people, including tribals. So I'll be looking at two stories from this collection of short narratives the author compiled during her stay in prison. I'll give the title of both the narratives. One is Homeless, Revli's story, and the second one is The Dam Shall Not Be Built. Both the stories revolve around the the experiences of two different tribal women. One is called Revli, the other one is called Reva Bai. The first story is about Revli's experiences. She is a tribal who hails from the village of Sukhiamli, and when one looks at both these narratives, they sort of depict two different reactions to such a calamity in the name of development. What happens is that Revli and her family is sort of complacent in all these things, that they're not really trying to resist the government. And eventually what happens is that her entire village of Sukhiamli gets submerged under the rising waters due to the dam, and they get displaced. The story is very unique because Nandini Oza meets Revli in prison, and she's been there for 5 years, and she basically has no contact with the outside world. Nobody comes to meet her, nobody talks with her. So it's literally like solitary confinement. So one day she walks up to Nandini Oza and asks her, can you write a letter for me? And she writes a letter for Revli. And Oza, as usual, asks her an address where she could post it, for which Revli replies, Rania Lashkaria, which is the name of her husband, platform number 4, Dharampuri railway station. Oza is completely flabbergasted. She's giving a platform number as an address. So she asks her, don't you have a home? Why are you here? So at which point Revli narrates her entire experience of getting displaced, her entire family being nearly destroyed, and herself, her husband's brother Tilya, all of them along with their son coming to live on the platforms of Dharampuri railway station. Initially, they leave their village because it's completely submerged in water, and with the measly amount that the government gives them, they are only able to afford a small sort of shanty or a thatched roof hut located inside a slum in Dharampuri, from where they are again evicted because they don't have any money, and since they're tribals and most of their work involved foraging for food and a little agriculture on the side, they're unable to sort of integrate into the wider sort of systems in either a town or a city, and there is no employment. The only place they get employment is in a construction site, and this eventually leads to a very deteriorating situation. Slowly they are displaced, they are homeless, and they come to live in platform number 4 at Dharampuri railway station, where they are systematically harassed by the police and railway officials. Because of these unclean environments, what happens is that her child suddenly starts coughing up blood, and it's revealed that he is suffering from tuberculosis. Finally, what happens is that her husband is also ill, and nobody is able to earn in the household, and Revli has to resort to becoming a mule carrying drugs for a local drug distributor through the train. She is eventually caught by the police, taken to and thrown in prison, where she happens to meet Nandini Oza. And she's been in there for 5 years, and systematically every contact or every connection that she had with the outside world has been eliminated. And Nandini Oza is also not able to help her. Eventually what happens is that she says she'll go and find her husband, but she's unable to locate her husband. And the story ends in tragedy, with Oza not being able to find her family, and eventually not knowing whether after being released, Revli found her family or where she went. So what's happened is that we have thinkers like Michel Foucault. When he talks about on Attica prison, an interview, he does say that prison is a machine. It's a machine that is designed to systematically break the inmate, break them to their most finest, minute levels of existence, and eliminate them. If it is unable to eliminate them, when they eventually come out of prison, they are in such a state that society itself will resend them to prison, or will eliminate them eventually. So we can actually see this happening systematically. People at a theoretical level talk about, they usually talk about tribal displacement. This story gives you a systematic map of what happens to what happens to a tribal when they get the measly compensation given by the government and they come to a city or a town. Revli at one point remarks a very good thing. She makes a pertinent point when she says, of course they gave us some money, but what is the compensation for our land, the river, the forest that gave us all our food and sort of fulfilled all our needs? Where is the compensation for those things? The government never gave us these things. So a similar sort of experience can be observed in the next story called The Dam Shall Not Be Built, wherein the protagonist is a woman, a tribal woman called Reva Bai, who hailed from another village called Jamli in Gujarat. If one remembers, during the Sardar Sarovar project that was started in 1987, nearly 19 villages had been sort of displaced or removed in Gujarat, while 200 or so, a total of 200 something villages in the other states of Maharashtra. And what happens is that Reva Bai, she resists this entire apparatus, this government machinery that's trying to take away her land. And what happens is that she is systematically criminalized. What we can see in the story is that she is systematically criminalized. Her acts of protest are interpreted as actions against the state, as malicious actions against the state, and eventually a case is trumped up against her, wherein the government claims that she manhandled and tried to harm a fellow villager, and citing this as a reason, the police are able to sort of go inside Jamli village in the middle of the night, drag Reva Bai outside of her house, and eventually rape her. This case, the story does give us the details, some of the details of this case, but what happens is that she starts fighting this case out in the courts, but the case just keeps dragging on. Initially, what happens is that the Narmada Bachao Andolan, along with people like the author, are able to support her and give her the spotlight. But as the dam project keeps progressing, more and more villages are being submerged, more and more people are being oppressed, and this becomes a pattern with the others. So what happens is that Reva Bai is systematically forgotten by everyone. She is systematically forgotten, and the custodial atrocities that happened against her become a part of a wider statistic that can only be displayed for numbers. Eventually, this results in a situation where Nandini Oza, actually at one point she says, she becomes very silent. Reva Bai becomes very silent, and the fire she once had of protesting completely goes away, because repeatedly, in the name of sort of solving or trying to get her justice, whether that is the medical machinery or the judicial machinery, asks her to relive the same event of rape again and again, resulting in a situation where she is left completely traumatized. And Oza, towards the end of that story, gives us what happens. At one point, she is given the news that Reva Bai has committed suicide. She has hung herself inside her hut, thereby completely eliminating herself from the entire equation. And as we all know, the project that was started in 1987 eventually got finished after all the protests and resistance and everything. Eventually did get finished at 2017, and we still don't know the realities or the implications of the ramifications of what we did in the name of development. So in my abstract, I do mention about Arne. If one reads one particular essay about Arne, wherein he specifically talks about dam building and the improper way of development, he does give us two ideas. The name of the essay is Industrial Society, Post-Modernity, and Sustainable Development. And he gives us 2 points that will help us understand this better. the act of building a dam is basically a Western conception of how the industrialized society comes to a position wherein it can control nature. That a dam is a systematic point where you can actually see government machinery or the state building an apparatus that restricts the flow of a natural water body. And he does give us an opinion that this sort of development cannot be considered sustainable in the long run. He also goes into the economic aspect of understanding people people, especially tribal people, and we can connect this with Revabai and Revli. He says that when we look at things like compensation and how they live, we gauge them using Western economic models. What happens is that we eventually resort to giving them only money as compensation, and when we look at them, we actually consider them to be living in a state of poverty. But the tribal is actually, it becomes impoverished and lives in a state of poverty only when he or she is removed from the forest or from the natural landscape where he has sort of learned to live. He's technically not in a state of poverty. The landscape where he dwells actually fulfills all his needs, and he is able to live a very content and fulfilling life. But when we sort of impress upon them the model of development that we see in third world countries, especially derived from Western models, what happens is a very calamitous event that could be observed in both these narratives. It doesn't matter whether you resist or you are complacent. Eventually, what happens is that in the name of development, there is systematic elimination of tribals by the state machinery.
Ajay, you need to conclude now, please.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, right. I will conclude with this statement of elimination and the prison apparatus being used as a tool to house and displace and eliminate tribals systematically in India. And this is actually an ongoing process. If one reads present day prison narratives like Colors of the Cage by Arun Ferreira, one can see that this is happening not only in one place but a pattern throughout India where legal, judicial and penal machineries are used as tools to not simply oppress but to make these people imperceptible. If you can't see them, if they can't take the center stage, they won't be able to fight for their rights. So making them imperceptible is the goal, and then eliminating them is the goal of the state, which is being carried out. And this we are able to observe through readings of both these prison narratives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajay. Very, very important, especially when we are talking about oral histories and Oza's contribution as curator of oral history. So we'll come to that at the end. We come to our next speaker, which is, I think we'll take the questions at the end because they're all interconnected narratives. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Premjith Matthew, who's working at DRBCCC Hindu College, Pattabhiram, as an assistant professor. He's passionate about memory studies, especially digital memory studies, and is the founder and chief investigator of After, an independent research project in digital memory studies. Extremely intriguing and looking really forward to the paper. Over to you, Professor Matthew. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Good evening. I hope you can hear me. I hope my voice is clear.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jadavpur. So thank you. First of all, let me thank the team behind this in tandem research project. It is so happy. It's so good to be here on a Friday evening. So let me thank Maria Priti ma'am for inviting me or just suggesting that there is a program like this. So I'm so happy that I've joined. And I also would like to thank Debashree ma'am for hosting this event, and even my co-presenters Ajay and Manjari. And I also would like to keep in the thanks to our Nancy ma'am and Priyadarshini for taking care of all the behind the scenes, what all things they're doing. Very good. Thank you for that. So my presentation is actually a pictorial one. I'll be sharing my screen. So if there's any problem in my presentation, I'll be also posting this pictorial presentation in our in tandem group, WhatsApp group, so that if at all you have any problem here, you can always have a backup. So just post it there in the WhatsApp group also. So let me just present. Give me just 1 minute. Okay, I hope you can see the presentation now.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I've just named it as you know, one of my recent interest has been there for the past 2-3 years. It's memory studies, and I spend a lot of time working on it, especially on a daily basis. And today I'd like to share some of the some findings. And when the present narrative, the topic was suggested, I thought, okay, maybe this will be one good way of connecting present narratives or present experience to memory studies. So I think the topic is given as incarcerated memories, because it's also a kind of, the memories are also imprisoned sometimes. So I feel that there is a need to give them some wings, some freedom. So I hope by this presentation, I'll be able to touch upon certain important aspects where we can connect memory studies and present narratives. So let me move on to the plan for today. I got 8 important things to discuss with you. I hope I'll be able to finish by 6:55. I think that's the time, 15 minutes for me. Right. So let me start with just read out the important things. I'm looking at trauma. It will be in a very personal level. I'll share my own personal experiences. Reconciliation, which is in the collective level, then immediate memories, movies and memories, then memorialization, food and memory studies, and life writing and memories, and finally prison as a mnemonic metaphor. So these are the topics that I have in my mind. I hope I'll be able to do some justice to this topic. So let us start with the first one. So the first one actually is in a micro neurocognitive psychological kind of memory, which actually very personal memory experience which I like to share. And from 2013 to 2017, I was working in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Bahrain is a small island country near Qatar and very near Saudi Arabia. So I was working there as a teacher in the Ministry of Education. So while I was working, Bahrain is a very kind of volatile kind of country. Maybe some of you would have heard about Bahrain. So basically, Bahrain, what you see there is clashes on the roads and streets. So whenever I take my transportation from my college to my home, I tend to see a lot of tires being burned and a lot of petrol bombs being thrown at vehicles and all this. So it's very, very like a war-torn, but it's not like every day. But most of the days we have this kind of. So you can see the picture which I've given. On one side you can see the riot police in their full gear. They're moving towards the so-called anti-social elements. The main problem in Bahrain is actually a religious and a political one, because Bahrain is ruled by a minority there, and the majority is Sunni Muslim, and the majority is actually Shia Muslim, supported by Iran. The Sunni Muslim, the ruling faction is supported by Saudi Arabia. So we have a clash there, which actually is quite normal. Even what is happening in Yemen and Saudi is also it's almost the same. So even Syria, what happened in Syria, it's all the undercurrents are the same. So daily sight of seeing these people, maybe sometimes even I can see people wounded sometimes on the streets of. Like on the way, I was even working in a shipping company as part of my Ministry of Education. Had sent me there for teaching students. I mean the workmen of Asri. Asri is actually one of the largest ship maintenance company in Bahrain. So they have a dry dock and all that. So I used to go there like 3 times a week. So even while going there, I could see the Hith prison where I could see a lot of people waiting outside, trying to get access to the prison so that they can see their loved ones. That is one thing. And second thing is like when I was working almost towards the end of my 4-year stay in Bahrain, again, I was assigned, I don't know why they assigned me, but the assignment came to me. So I was assigned to go to the prison to do exam for a student. His name is Salman. I still remember Salman because Salman came in wearing the prison overall. And I had to give him an exam because he expressed his desire to write exam because he was imprisoned for 8 years, and the kind of charges against him was he made a country bomb. So he was there for 8 years, and I'd go there and sit with him for 3-hour exam. So it was a very, one way it was very experience-wise, it was very good in the sense going inside the prison and all that. But now when I think about all those things, so I feel there's a little bit still I sometimes think about him, his face. I don't know about him because I've left Bahrain. I don't have any way of being in touch with him. But then later on, I heard, before I left the country, I heard that he has passed the exam, which actually maybe he's really interested in studies and all that. So I always compare him with our students here, those who are totally free, like they don't have any other, what you call, problem with freedom. They're free. But how they don't know the value of freedom, So I always think about Salman sometimes whenever I reflect on my teaching career. So that is the micro-neurocognitive way of looking at prison. The fact that when you come in contact, for example, I heard that in my college we have BA Criminology department. They actually told me that they are planning to take the students to Coimbatore for an open jail. I think in Coimbatore they have open prison. So they are going to Coimbatore maybe after next month of April. So he has invited me. He told me, sir, why don't you join? So I'm not told him yes. I'm not told him no also. So maybe I don't know. So all these experiences, that is more like something more than what we get from books. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This one is actually where memory operates in a cultural level, in a macro level, extended level, where we talk about the so-called reconciliation part of memory, prison narrative, where there is because memory studies is always about remembering and forgetting, So how does, so memory study is not just about trauma and the horrors of human errors, but the reconciliation part is also very important. So we have truth, reconciliation, and the process of national healing. So you can see always, Ramadan is going to start, and most of the Arabian Gulf countries, they have this habit of pardoning their prisoners. So I think this is the latest news which came today in today's paper that around 1,400 prisoners are being pardoned by the UAE leader. So it's part of their culture. It's something which happens every year, especially for Ramadan and even for Bakrid, I think they do that. So the questions to be kind of discussed is, can individuals be reconciled to their past and cure? So memory study is not just about trauma. It's not just about whenever we talk about memory studies, people talk about Holocaust, people talk about all genocides and all. But no, I don't think so. Memory study is got a very strong, positive message which we should deliver or we should convey. So I think this is where I think memory studies serves its purpose, because all arts, all subjects should have some kind of human, there should be some kind of cleansing or catharsis happening. So I think in that way, I think memory studies definitely serves that purpose. It's not a dark, like gloomy kind of subject. It has got hope, and reconciliation is one. And you can see all over the world we have lots and lots of tales of reconciliation. I remember even discussing with Preeti ma'am many different, Australia for example, Canada for example. Even recently, I think I read about Iceland. They were so a lot of people are saying sorry now, apology, public apologies. So this is all part of the past. What all things happened, now they are realizing that there is something to be done. Even in India also we had this Jallianwala Bagh. They expected the Queen to come and say an official sorry, but unfortunately she didn't do that. Like that, So and we have one interesting book. Even the movie came out afterwards. I think this book is written by Eric Lomax, and this book is actually about this person, UK born person who was actually imprisoned in Singapore or Japan. I think Japanese troops imprisoned, they fought him, and he was working with the Death Railway, and how he actually kind of pardoned his the capture by the person who caught him. So which actually was again a kind of a very good sign of reconciliation. So let us move on to the next slide. Now we talk about immediate memories. I got two kind of visual case studies here. The first one is actually about this priest from India who was actually abducted by the IS Islamic soldiers, Islamic State soldiers in Yemen. His name is Father Tom, and you can see the first image you have is actually the image which was released by IS where he was in their custody. And meanwhile, so all these things are happening in media. All these images are taken from media. So how media and memory, and we call it immediate memories, where we have the representation of all this coming up in media. So and a lot of praise being offered for Father when he was in prison. And you can see the next image where he's coming out, wearing the traditional Yemeni dress. And we also have the so-called, when the person behind the Sushma Swaraj who was very much involved in bringing this person home. Which actually was a great thing did by Sushma. And Sushma is still remembered for all these good things she did. And we still love her and we still remember her for all these things. And the next one is actually Amanda Knox. She's actually an American student who was imprisoned in Italy. She was part of she was actually, she was kind of the Italian police actually blamed her for the death of a roommate. And a lot of information, a lot of discussion, and even she wrote a memoir called Waiting to be Heard, which actually is again a continuation of so it's like a beginning and an end, I think 2 days back again she had some court rule which came from Italy. I think she is totally free of the charges which was leveled against her. The next one is digital memories. We have movies and lots of web series. For example, the most famous one is Shawshank Redemption, and again Green Mile. And both are actually so-called one of the most important case studies. When you talk about prison narrative, we always talk about these two movies, and also the series Orange is the New Black, which premiered some 2-3 years ago in Netflix, and even Unbroken, one movie, which actually is again based on a book. I also would like to bring your attention to this movie called Madilugal, which came in Malayalam, where the movie is based on the story by Vaikom Mohammad Bashir. You can see him sitting under the mangosteen tree, having his tea in a flask. And the movie is actually shot inside the prison. You can see the director, Adur Gopalakrishnan there. And also you can see the main actor, Mammootty. So the movie is so special because there is only main two actors we have. One is Mammootty, which actually should be Bashir maybe. And the female voice, which is the other side of Madrigal in Malayalam means wall. So the female voice can only be heard. I mean, you can't see the female actor played by KPSC Dattaray, who is recently she passed away. So the movie is very special because it has got this very interesting way of telling the story. So only the voice of the actor can see it, and Mammootty is only one who is. So it's very interesting movie which talks about the prison experience, and even the poster, Madilugal, the walls, directed by a very famous film director, Adur Gopalakrishnan. Okay, let us move on to the next one. Prison as memorials, where we have we look at the different types of the memorialization of prisons happening. Especially you can see. I tend to look at it in a little bit critical manner because you can see the first one is actually light and sound show happening in the Kala Pani or the cellular jail, where you have it's a historical and very very special place. It has got Indian history. Even we have a movie by the name Kala Pani. But the kind of commercialization that happens, the commodification that happens in a place like Andaman and Nicobar and even cellular jail. Even this is the Robben, which actually Ajay spoke about in his quiz, the Robben Islands where Mandela was imprisoned. So even there we have lots and lots of commercialization commodification happening. That is one place. And even Alcatraz prison in US, even there they have commodification happening. And Roman Island, you can see how they have a selfie point where people can take selfie. So all these things actually is part of the so-called commodification of memory, or commodification of the experiences of being in a prison. And Yerwada prison, recently, 2021, actually they started prison tours. People can take a prison tour where they can get an audio or something, and maybe a guide maybe, and they will take you around. Because Yerwada is very famous for Ajmal Kasab was there, and even other people, they were all imprisoned in Maharashtra, Yerwada jail. Well, let us move to the next one. This is about prison and prison food and memory studies, because recently in IIT Madras, we have a very strong network of memory studies practitioners like Dr. Abhishek and Dr. Marin. They had this seminar on food and memory studies. So I thought maybe why don't we talk about prison food and memory studies, because in Chennai there is a hotel with the name Kaidi Kitchen. I hope some of you are aware of it. It's in Mylapore, if I'm right. And there you can see, if you look at the picture, you can see it's actually a theme-based prison where you have, lots and lots of prison kind of ambience they have created. And you can always see, it's very interesting. So how prison has become more like a restaurant now. And even Kerala, I think prison inmates, people who are there in the prison, they actually prepare chapati and other things and they serve it. They have a free food for freedom, an exclusive shop for jail products. So again, all these things are studies which people can conduct. So my purpose of this presentation is not to say that this is just some of the ways you can explore, connect prison studies or food and memory studies. There's a lot of options. And there's also one poster where they compare the food given in the prison and the food given at schools, the level of calorie and all that. So all these things are different ways of looking at these prison narratives. And then literature, of course, we have life writing and memoirs, and also we have Alexander Solostein's Ivan Denisovic.
Professor Matthew, you could make it conclude.
Yes, ma'am. 2 minutes. Ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have this beautiful book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which talks about the Gulam, the Russian Gulam, and Papillon is also very famous, and also this book by Jacobo Timberman. All these books are very close to my life, so I just picked. There are many other books. I'm sure that you will have many other books to talk about when it comes to prison literature. These 3 books are kind of my favorite books when it comes to prison. And then recently we have this pandemic, and we are still in a pandemic-like situation. And I think everyone was in a prison. I think the world as a prison and everyone as a prisoner. So prison experience is not something which is only happening inside the prison. And the British Journal of Criminology, they have come out with a study about the experiences of pandemic. Even the prisoners, they were very affected by this prison, because of the pandemic, because they had a very difficult daily routine. And this person by the name Salvo Zizek, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct. I tried learning his pronunciation, but it's very difficult to pronounce his name. It's a Slavic or Slovenian language, I don't know. So he's written 2 books. One is The Pandemic, which came out almost like on time, and second book, Pandemic 2, right? Both these books are related to this prison experience, and even pandemic and maybe like all the social distancing and all that. So I would like to end my presentation with this quote by Victor Hugo: "He who opens a school door closes a prison." So I think ultimately why we are studying prison studies, why we are discussing prison narratives, is to stop people going to the prison. So there won't be any need for a prison if we have schools being opened all over the world where people can learn and study. So thanks again. Thanks to the team QMC and even Debashree ma'am and even my all the listeners. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Matthew. That was really very, very fascinating, going through different media and everything. I am really looking forward to the conversation that's going to follow, because this was really very, very interesting. And I completely endorse your choice of those 3 books. They're really beautiful books. So, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
We will have the discussion at the end.
Yes, ma'am.
And Thakur is currently a research scholar in the Center for South Asian Studies, University of Cambridge. She's completed her M.Phil from Jadavpur University, India, in comparative literature, and her master's at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, India. She has also presented her work at International Comparative Literature Association Congress and at Jadavpur University, London Centre for Interdisciplinary Research, and Johns Hopkins University, USA. Research interests are trauma studies, poetry, and psychoanalysis. So over to you, Manjari. You have 15 minutes, right? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dattaray, for introducing me. And I would like to thank Dr. Srinivasan for giving me this platform to speak, and also my co-presenters, Dr. Matthew and Ajay, um, for their wonderful presentations. And I'll just delve into the topic straight away. So my presentation is on Jigna Vora's book. It's called Behind the Bars in Byculla. And before I go into it, I just want to introduce the whole idea about trauma studies and what we are trying to do here, which is, as Dr. Matthew was already saying, that it's not just always very sad and bleak when it comes to trauma, but also the whole idea about reconciliation and rehabilitation, which we look forward to. So in doing that, what we are trying to do is to form a new concept, a new theory for trauma studies, which is different from the Eurocentric, from the very Western concept about trauma, which is to view the whole, look at grand narratives like World War and Holocaust and all of that, but to move into and look at more pocket narratives of trauma, which are very like individual and which are at various levels interdisciplinary, which are plural, which give voice to polyglottal entities who either miss out on taking part in societal organizations in society nonetheless. And this is where I think that this book and all prison narratives come into the play, that when we talk about Indian prison narratives, it is mostly looking at them and their voice from different perspectives, from different lenses, the lens of gender, the lens of caste, the lens of religion, the lens of maybe the refugees from that lens. So there are a lot of lenses which we should take into consideration and we should look at them. So this is primarily what we are trying to do to make that shift from the grand narrative to the individual pocket narratives. And that is where the whole idea about disease and disease bodies and death inside a prison comes into play. So this particular narrative is not just an experience by a woman who is inside the prison, but also it talks about how different parameters of experiences are measured inside the prison. So to introduce the text a little bit, so Jigna Vora was a crime reporter who has worked at various journals like Free Day Journal and Midday and Mumbai Mirror and Asian Age. And before she was accused of killing another senior crime reporter, Dr. Jyotirmoy De, and that is when it all started, and she was imprisoned for 9 months in Byculla, and later on the case went on trial for like 6 years, and it was a whole ordeal. But what is important is that the chapters are really small, and they bring out the nuances of being a woman prisoner in India, and also it makes us question the very brutal and harshest realities of the prison experience, which is to say that it sort of makes us question the whole understanding of this concept of soul and how it is constantly broken down inside that space of surveillance. And I think Ajay was also talking about it for a bit. So if we go on to the whole Foucauldian analysis of it, which is important, which is very important, I think. So Foucault basically talks about two kinds of societies, and one is called the anthropophagy, and the other is called the anthropophagy. So in the first one, the society deliberately assimilates the subjects who have crossed the boundary or the line of what we think is normal. And in the later scenario, it's the society excludes the individual completely, either by killing them or by way of exile. So when we think about the prison, it is mostly of the anthropophagic category. Like, we want to get rid of the subjects as a society because we deem that certain something is normal, and we try to do it by getting them transferred to various carceral institutions. And that does not always only mean a prison. It can be hospitals, it can be schools, it can be madhouses, anything to prove that these subjects are abnormal and must be rehabilitated into the normalcy. And now, when we talk about diseased bodies, this whole idea about normalcy inside the prison becomes very important, because the whole conception of the carceral is to establish the fact that the people who are there are like deviated from the normal, like they are deviated from what we understand when we say docile bodies. So we would like to look at the very Proto-Indo-European understanding of the word medicine, which comes from the root med, which is literally transliterated into appropriate measure. And because disease involves an imbalance, or as we think so this should be countered by balance or order, as opposed to inappropriate measure. So in this term, the term imbalance or excess is what marks Vora's narrative, and it consists of quite a few diseased bodies. And ultimately, we will see that a lot of bodies lead to death, like they die ultimately. And so when the narrative opens, we see that the person who actually reported against Vora, Dr. Himanshu Roy, who was the chief investigating officer, his body is described, and he's ridden with cancer, and he commits suicide. So that's how the narrative begins. And the whole masculine anatomy of a police officer, that is challenged, and that is reverberated, and the mark of the disease and the abolition of youth and the eventuality of death is what is placed through that narrative. He commits suicide, as I already said, but it is not only his body which is echoed with the recurrence of death and disease. We also see a lot of women inmates who undergo this sort of repeated reference to their bodies which are diseased. There's this inmate called Suman Soni, which her body is described as grotesque because it's thin to the point of emaciation, and her clothes have they are all almost sticking to her body, and she's shrunken and all of that. And then there is also the whole reference to AIDS as a disease, which is also a very, very common thing in prison, because a lot of prostitutes would be sent to prison, and once they go into prison, they would be checked there, and they would not have no idea that they have AIDS, but they would get to know that they have AIDS when they are there. And often we see that there are this this whole idea that we should stay away from people who have diseases, and that is sort of exemplified in such a small space. And we see that an inmate called Samara Bivi, she asks Vora to not engage with a conversation with this other inmate called Sangeeta because she's sick, she's diseased, and she has AIDS. So that is one more thing. And this sort of goes on even to the point where menstruation is thought of as a disease. And in a patriarchal society like ours, where it's already quite, we all know, like, menstruation is considered already to be something which should be shunned. So that is also very much reflected in the narrative. Like, while Vora, like, first goes into the prison, there's whole idea about stripping of the prisoner to the last piece of clothing, and you are given a number, and you are like allocated a jail cell, and that is what becomes your identity. But it does not end at that. It's like Vora repeatedly kept on saying that she's menstruating, but they did not stop at it. They asked her to strip down to the last bit of her clothing. And this is what all of the prisoners, all of the women prisoners have to undergo every time the outsiders, or like the prison guards or other people think that there's a need for surveillance. And that is what it is. Like, it is not only that it's the disease of the particular person's body or the particular person's mind, but it's the disease of the narrative itself. It's like, it's a deformation of the person where you break down the person into pieces and sort of try to take away the last bit of identity that he or she has as an individual in the society. But we should also keep in mind that this has a much more larger, like, ideological and political significance, because the Indian judiciary is one where there's this continuation of the whole concept of alienation, that you should be like kept away from the society because you are harmful and you are a pervert. And that is how Foucault also talks about it, like in his lectures in France. And the whole colonial history of Indian prison, I think, does very accordingly to that sort of an idea, where it not only follows through the whole idea of the architecture, the panopticon and all of that, but also of like how to keep a vigil on the activities of prisoners. And there's no need of like any sort of architectural establishment for that, but it is supposed to be a controlling space. So that is what all throughout the narrative we sort of see coming up and going, like how different groups of people inside the prison, be it women, be it women prisoners, be it the guards, any group, they are constantly kept under surveillance through their bodies, through understanding of how their minds and how their bodies have been accommodating different kinds of trauma and different kinds of diseases, so as to not cause a chaos, or what we think of is a chaos. And one of the examples is I think it's a very good example, and it comes up in a lot of prison narratives, is the idea of deviant sexuality, like to prevent women from getting into like sexual relationships with other women.
Manjari, you have around 2 minutes to conclude.
Thank you. Yeah. So people are given certain sort of medicines, because that is also considered a kind of disease. And so there are these, maybe they're rumors, maybe they're not, but there are these narratives which come up every now and then about the the surveillance of even biological inclinations inside a prison system. So not only the deviant behaviors, but also like normal functionings of inmates' bodies are watched over. And it is sort of like the routine dependent life which prison narratives every now and then bring out to us. And it is, I feel like, as people working in the field, it is sort of our responsibility to talk about this, to be with them, and just make this shift possible, where we give voice to these sort of very individual and very small peripheral narratives to come into the fore. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manjari. Thank you very much, especially speaking in terms of intersectionality when it comes to Jigna Vora's narrative. So thank you. I think these were very interesting and interrelated papers that came in front of us today, especially when you're looking into this implicit comparative dimension of prison literature as a genre and also as a literary political praxis. So, I mean, how prison literature kind of situates its narratives vis-a-vis standards of justice and human rights that are in a way both abstract and tangibly, although unevenly, enforced across the world. So I think these were very intriguing papers, and I could talk more, but I'm not going to do that. And I'll open this session for any questions, comments that you could have. You could write in your chat box if you had questions. Anyone who had any queries, because these were very, very interesting papers, and I, for one, did learn a lot from these sessions. So, any questions, anyone? Any questions, any comments, anything from any of our audience members? Any questions? Anyone? Right. I think it's always a question of, starting this. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Debashree ma'am, actually, it's not a question. I just want to ask Manjari.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's related to our Abarna ma'am. And I think ma'am had posted something about her upcoming theatrical event. I think it's called Firefly Women. I think you are part of that, right? Firefly Women. Not you. No, maybe it's somebody else. Maybe because my niece Manjari is doing. Maybe some other Manjari. Maybe no. I'm sorry. Extremely sorry. Because it came immediately after the Google Meet notification. I thought she's referring to Manjari, and I thought this Manjari is that Manjari. I'm extremely sorry. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
I just want to make a comment. When Manjari was talking about surveillance, I thought of surveillance at the workplace, which is, you have the cameras in the classroom, you have the cameras on every floor, and it took me back to the slave drivers on the cotton fields. So it's just that, you're doing it with technology now, and way back then it was surveillance by, this master figure riding on horseback and through the plantations. This is just an observation about, and the whole world has become a prison because of this surveillance culture that way. So, thank you, Manjari, for a very interesting paper and about that women who are subjected to this kind of thing, and even when being frisked at airports, at the American Library. So, I mean, at least in Chennai, we all avoid the American Library just for that one reason. If you can endure that and get through that, you can kind of enjoy the library. But how do we? And so it's a kind of double-edged sword. In the name of security, there is violation of human dignity. And so these are just observations and comments.
Yes, Preeti, I agree with you. And yeah, it has always like been there. Surveillance has existed, I think, in various ways through various societies. And with the pandemic, I think it has drastically increased. Um, yeah, with the like, there's no way to escape it. But yeah, the thing is that we should take into consideration human rights and how to, you know, keep a basic idea about doing it the right way, maybe, if there is a right way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was wondering if there are any other questions, any other comments from anyone.
A
I
comment.
actually, yes, go ahead, Dhruva.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Thank you to all the presenters. They were wonderful papers. I found Manjari's talk really interesting because she was talking about menstruation. And just a thought, a quick connection to those who have seen the film. I'm referring to Andar Mahal by Rituparna Ghosh. And you know, the it translates as, you know, the inside compartments of the house, and you see how these women are sort of confined, but yet in the end how menstruation becomes a way of writing herself and writing her body. And I think it's important to sort of locate these instances as a voice, and it sort of again coincides with what Siksu is writing about, you know, women writing themselves and using the body as a medium. So yeah, it does pose philosophical problems to different schools, because, you know, the body is seen as a prison in most strands of thought. But again, there is always a chance to sort of reread these narratives and see them differently, see body occurrences as something different and as a voice in itself. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dhruva. Manjari, would you like to
No,
respond
no.
or say
Thank you so much,
yeah.
Dhruva, for your insight. And yeah, I agree with whatever you said. I mean, there are always different theoretical understandings and philosophical understandings about how the body is to be viewed. But in the very sense of the term, I think it's important for an individual to decide how to possess one's own body and to look at it, if it makes any sense. Yeah, so that's the thing. Thank you. Yeah, over to you, Debashree.
This is just a clarification from Premjith sir. What is the connection between truth and reconciliation and prison narratives? Maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed a point.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I think it's all about, you know, society, how we remember and forget sometimes. You know, like happens in history or in any other errors of human history. You know, like we always try to like just like a prisoner who is incarcerated and when he's coming out. You know, society is not ready to accept him, or they're not ready to forget that. So there's a lot of reconciliation there, like kind of people trying to understand the past, you know. So that's the kind of connection I try to make there. Like, I hope it works. I'm not sure whether it is. So in terms of, you know, kind of pardoning, or, you know, I think this Eric Lomax's book, The Railwayman, is a good example, because he went all the way to Singapore. I think he went to meet the person who actually tortured him, and the movie ends with a beautiful note. You know, both of them walking down that railway line where actually he made it's a very beautiful, touching end to that movie. So that's where I try to connect it. You know, like how prisoners are being reconciled to society. You know, like how they are trying to get back. And most of them, when they even this movie Shawshank Redemption, you know, the person who the old man who actually leaves the prison, he's not able to adjust with society, and he actually hangs himself. And he writes, Bruce was here, something like that, you know, and that kind of thing. And in that context, I try to like think like that. And I hope I made the connections clear.
Okay. So it actually it leads to setting ourselves free, right? Free of our past.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Even
yes,
that way. Yeah, true, ma'am. Yeah, even
yeah.
can work out. Yeah, can be
Free
done.
of anger, free of the
Yes, yes,
resentment.
yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. It's possible. It's possible. Yes.
I would just ask if there are any more questions. Any other questions or comments? Right. Okay. Right. Preeti, how much time do we have?
Uh, yeah, you can probably ask. So if no one's coming, you can bring in your comments and
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So no, I just had a question about how when you're looking into this global, I mean, I'm thinking about prison memory on one hand, and I'm also thinking about the global imaginary, and especially when it comes to this living archive created by prison literature. I mean, where you're trying to pass down knowledge and experience. So, I mean, one of the things that I'm questioning is this global imaginary, especially of solidarity through this experience of incarceration. So I was wondering if how do you think the pandemic affects such global imaginaries? Has it affected it in any way? Uh, I mean, any of the panelists could respond to that. Do you think this global imaginary of solidarity that is there through these incarcerated memories have been affected by the pandemic or in any form or the other? If you could perhaps respond to that. Anyone? A minute. Uh, if that works. How? Because I think Ajay spoke about a very important oral historian, the narrative of the oral historian, um, and Oza is somebody who's very, very instrumental in actually creating this entire archive, digital archive, and I think it also went into Professor Matthews' take on the digital memory and Manjari's, of course, interventions with Vora. So I'm interested in this global imaginary that is being created, this global imaginary across different media on the idea of solidarity. And if you have had any recent readings that have impacted your understanding of this solidarity, if you have any comments, or maybe that's something that we could all think about at some point. Um, that's one of the things that I had. Yes, Professor Matthews.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I think it's a very different way of looking at the whole thing. Like the
Mm-hmm.
possibility of a universal narrative, maybe. I think that's what you're trying to pinpoint. Like I think recently because of the Russian-Ukrainian war, there is a
Yeah.
lot of digital archiving be happening. I recently, I didn't read any book or something, but in Twitter, this journalist from Ukraine, they've actually shared some of the pictures and they actually created a kind of archive. Even all those people who are living, it's like a prison house, the subways and underground tram stations, where they are all holed up for many weeks, So it creates a kind of, again, a kind of prison-like situation. So I think, yeah, I'm not totally, into it, but still, since you talked about it, definitely we'll
Yeah.
be looking into it. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for pointing out.
Thank you, Professor Matthews.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Ajay, go ahead.
With regards to the pandemic and prison writing, I only have two. I read a couple of instances recently written by prisoners during the pandemic. I read one by an American prisoner who has been incarcerated at the prison in New York during this pandemic, and it was well, what can we say? It was a little tragic because there in America it seems they do get a phone call to sort of call and talk to their families during the pandemic. As if one remembers, when the corona wave started hitting America, New York was deeply affected. Communications were severed. People, hospitals were sort of flooded with patients. And this prisoner writes, I have a wife and child back there in New York. I've been calling them for a week. Nobody is picking up. I don't know what happened to them. the inmate next to my cell is coughing. He is unable to breathe, and they have a specific section inside the prison where it seems they took people whom they thought were infected, and what he says is many of them didn't come back. This narrative is actually in open source. You could find it in among the archives in Penn American Prison Writing. Penn, which as people would know, is sort of like an organization that goes into prisons and comes out with all of their narratives. With respect to India, what happened was that our prisons were, they're basically overcrowded. There's a lot of people inside that space. So what happened was that the moment the corona wave started hitting, and they could detect people being infected inside Indian prisons, even here in Tamil Nadu, what happened was that they started giving bails and other amenities to the prisoners so that they can leave the prison complex. And once I remember reading an article in the Indian Express that talked about a prison exodus happening in India because of the pandemic, and people and officials unable to sort of manage the situation inside prison. So these are some of the recent narratives that sort of help us understand how the pandemic was faced in India, in Indian prisons and prisons in countries like America.
Thank you so much. I mean, if you could share the link with us later on at some point, that would be very helpful. I think that was a very, very important intervention. I think we are done as far as the time is concerned. And Preeti, I think so. Preeti got disconnected.
I just wanted to thank Ajay for connecting, police atrocities with marginalized communities.
Right.
Because whenever we speak about them, we talk about other things. It brought to mind also, Mother Forest by C.K. Janu, where she talks about all the police atrocities against the tribals in Kerala. So I just wanted to make that small contribution.
Yeah, thank you very much, Preeti, for that. I think we can draw this wonderful session to a close, and it was really good to have everyone around here, and it was good to meet members of Tandem again, and also to meet new members over here. So thank you very much for a wonderful session, and I thank the speakers and the audience for their presentations. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Professor Srinivasan. Preeti, over to you. Right. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And over to Priyadashni, our compere for the evening.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we really had an interesting discussion. I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers for raising your important work and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. I thank our principal, Dr. Uma Maheshwari ma'am, and our head of the department, Dr. Maria Preeti Srinivas ma'am, for her constant support. I thank our patron, Dr. Samuel Rupert sir, for his constant support, Dr. Srilata ma'am for being a part of In Tandem and enriching our knowledge, and the chairperson, Dr. Debashree Dattaray ma'am. I thank her for all her support rendered to us in today's meet, as she had come forward to chair the session and also arranged the presenter, Ms. Manjari ma'am, for this evening. I thank Premjith Matthew sir, Ms. Manjari ma'am, and Mr. Ajay sir for their fabulous presentation and an engrossing quiz session. I thank all the faculty of English department and scholars of English department for being a part of this learning platform. Thank you all. We will meet again after a fortnight. Do stay with us on this wonderful journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Premjith sir. Thank you, Manjari. Thank you, Debashree. Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Nancy, thank you so much for hosting this meet. Priyadashni.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am. Good night, ma'am. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Dear.
Bye, Preeti ma'am.